Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Cimmerian September. This is an event created by Michael K. Vaughan, where we read the original Conan stories by Robert E. Howard all throughout the month of September. September is long enough so that if you devote time every day to that, you can get all of the stuff that Robert E. Howard wrote of his most famous character done in that 1 month. I've been a little bit absent from Cimmerian September. It's not because I haven't been overloading on Conan stuff. I absolutely have been. I absolutely love doing it. I've just one thing after another has got in the way of the video output. But I've been taking a different tack with Cimmerian September. I've been reading The Savage Sword of Conan, Marvel Comics black and white magazine that they did 50, 40 years ago that went on forever and ever. It was meant to capitalize on both the black and white magazine market and also on the success of the color comic book Conan the Barbarian. And then it just kept going. And going and going and going. And I knew that. I had been an enthusiastic fan of the thing when it first came out and followed it regularly, even though it was a hefty chunk of the comic book buying budget when it came out. I still did that because I thought it was tremendous. I really enjoyed the slightly more relaxed, more, if you will, savage feel of what could be done in a big black and white magazine as opposed to a color comic. Although the color comics never really held your hand and handed you a lollipop either. But Savage Sword, after 20 issues or so, it started to dip in quality and then go back up and then dip and then go back up. And the dips were always longer. The droughts were always longer, where Roy Thomas might have been there. He was the writer. He might have been plugging away. And it might even have been John Buscema artwork. But it was often heavily inked by Ernie Chan, or Ernie Chan just did the artwork. And then other people started showing up. Other artists started showing up that weren't all that much to write home about. And the stories became, often seemed needlessly complicated, needlessly picky. In a way that I think by the time Savage Sword of Conan reached like issue number 150, I was kind of wishing that it would stop. And since it didn't, since comic books companies don't listen to me, I stopped. I would only spottily collect issues after that. If I got some word from, a comic book friend or later a comic book guy, the guy who runs the shop, that I was going to like a particular issue, then I might get it. Or if there was a really gripping cover. But there are plenty of Savage Sword issues after 150, especially after 180, that I have not read. And I did not note in my mind or in my journal at the time, I did not note when this long-running thing that I had loved so much stopped publishing. I didn't notice the time at all. I have been going through Savage Sword of Conan for Cimmerian September, and I have not been doing it. I've been reading them in order on my own, but I haven't been doing them issue by issue in order for this month. There isn't enough time anyway. I would have to do 10 a day. So I've been jumping around just to see what different periods were like and whatnot. And I've been noticing, the rereads have been confirming to me what my initial reaction was 40 years ago, which was that these things get worse as they go along, with only very few bright spots. So the other day, I thought, well, okay, if that's true, then why don't you just bite the bullet and go all the way to the end? Read the last 2 or 3 issues of Savage Sword of Conan, the very last ones ever made. So I did that. I want to report back on what I found, because it wasn't all what I was expecting. This is the cover of the second to last Conan issue. Conan is wearing a ponytail and pants. Leather pants. So either that's Conan the Barbarian, or maybe a picture of what happens when Duran Duran doesn't lead their set with their best numbers. This is what the audience does. Needless to say, a cover like this, I mean, what is she even doing? How do you get on a branch like that, in a position like that? How do you do that? She's holding on to Conan, but he's not the thing that'll stop her from falling if she slips. I don't know. And I also don't know what he's doing. That isn't a sword. It looks like he's stuffing a torch down this thing's mouth in his leather pants. But a cover like this is not encouraging at all, right? And in these later issues, there were separate, actually all through Savage Sword of Conan, there were separate storylines that went on and on. So you weren't going to get one creative team in one issue. You were going to get a couple of different stories, and sometimes they would be in different sections, so that you would have to follow the story. You'd have to know what happened before. I was worried about that for these last issues because I'm jumping all around here. Uh, and I expected something like this, artwork like that, uh, which is workmanlike. But here, let me turn the brightness down on this thing so that we can see it. It's workmanlike, but Conan doesn't look like Conan. None of the supporting characters look like themselves. This particular storyline, the one that I just tried to show you, was, let's see, brightness. The particular storyline that I tried to show you just then, it featured a character called Zula, who's a creation of Roy Thomas and is an interesting character, but you'd never know it from this story. Let's see if that does any better. Well, it's slightly better. You can certainly see that it's nothing to write home about. It's awkward and cartoony in ways that don't appeal at all. Here, if that worked a little, then let's see if it works a little more. Let's lower the brightness a lot, because this is a bright white page in a dimly lit room. Let's see if we can make a difference here. Yeah, there we go. That's much better. So this is what I got. But in this second to last issue of Savage Sword of Conan, that was the backup story. The artwork that I just showed you, Conan and Zula fighting silly Play-Doh monsters, was the backup story. When I opened the file to see what the main story was, I was astounded by what I found. And not astounded, as I do so many times with Savage Sword of Conan, for bad reasons. I was astounded for incredible reasons, breathtaking reasons. I found this. The Daughter of Rakatavashi, written by Roy Thomas with pencils by John Buscema, the great Conan artist John Buscema, and John Buscema inking his own work, which it never looks better than when he inks his own work. Look at just that opening page. It's unbelievable. And it just goes on from there. Just the artwork here is incredible. Look at this panel here, Conan standing in front of a mountain. It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. It goes on from there. I'll show you. It goes on. It's not the only example, but the story finds Conan leading a band of roughnecks into Vendia, into the country of Vendia, and he doesn't much care what their mission is. They have a mission to this mountain, to Mount Rakatavashi, which is called that by the locals because they say that is where their god lives. That's where their god lives. And it's haunted and a horrible place, and people go there and they never come back, or there are horrible stories told about it. The men don't really believe that. Conan knows better than not to believe it. Let's see here. One of them says, "Never heard of it back in Aquilonia. If we weren't in a hurry to find poor Renya, it might be fun to have a closer look at it, huh?" And Conan says, "If getting your belly ripped out is your idea of pleasure, Rakatavashi is Kyrgyz country. These are fierce mounted warriors." Kyrgyz? Aren't they demon worshippers or some such lunacy? And Conan responds, "Demons are real enough. Demon worshippers even more so." Because he's met his share of demons. But he doesn't really care. He's not going to convince them of anything. He goes off to hunt for food. Their food stores are low. And while he's gone, he leaves his man in charge. He leaves a man to pay attention to the camp. And the man overhears two of these Aquilonians plotting. Now that Conan has done what they want him to do, now that he's led them within sight of this mountain, they don't need him anymore. So they'll fake a quarrel and get him to go off in a huff. They're not planning to kill him, but they do kill his friend. Stab right through the tent and kill his friend. So they know the jig is up. They know what will happen if Conan comes back and finds his friend dead. So they hide the body and make a run for it to the mountain. Now they know where they are. They're not rescuing anyone. They have another plan in mind entirely. Conan is out hunting. He kills a deer, which wasn't doing anything to him. Look at that artwork. Just look at how beautiful that is. And then, adding insult to injury, surprise attackers shoot the deer's dead body. Saving Conan, but still, the deer can't catch a break. And when Conan gets back to camp, he finds his friend dead. He builds a cairn and then rides off. Just gorgeous. Just this gorgeous. I was sorry to keep going, gushing about it. But all I can think about is what Ernie Chan would do to these images. This is a picture. I won't go on like this, I promise. That is a picture of just Conan's face. He is deciding in that moment that these men killed a friend of his, and so it doesn't matter what their errand was. They must pay. He must hunt them down and make them pay for that. Blood for blood. He left his friend in charge. His friend died because of it. But just that panel has motion. It has the wind in Conan's hair. Ernie Chan would have ruined that. He would have maybe not ruined it in the mind frame of some comic book fans, but he would have stilled it. He would have turned down the motion in it and got rid of a lot of the little bits of suggestion that Buscema's inks always do. These inks, I know that I'm belaboring this, but these inks are Frazetta. They aren't Ernie Chan. They aren't Alfredo Alcala. They aren't anything in the comic book industry. They're Frank Frazetta, and an older school of advertising artwork that Buscema knew really well, and he brings it out in his inks. But it's not there in his pencils, or you can run roughshod right over it if you're a different kind of inker. But Conan finds these Kyrgyz warriors, and he beats their leader in combat, kills him, takes command of their band, and says, I know where a massive treasure is, and you'd be a fool to kill me, because then you'll never know. And we have, they don't believe him. They're saying, he lies! I, Uzun Beg, say we shall kill him, and continue after the caravan we've been tracking. And Conan says, and who to lead you? I'd wager you have many would-be chiefs, as you have knives to cut throats with. And Conan doesn't care. This is just perfect. Look at that. In Roy Thomas's, you can practically hear him belching. In Roy Thomas's last outing here, he captures Conan perfectly. And needless to say, John Buscema does as well. They decide, okay, Conan can lead them to riches. But they do, in the way they're going, they do encounter the caravan that they've been following. And they want to loot it. And Conan says, no. These are women and children. They don't have anything. We're not going to ride down on them and kill them all for no reason. There's no spoil here. This is just bloodlust. But a couple of his men decide to do so anyway. They decide to ride down on these people anyway. And one of them's about to swing on this poor woman when Conan cuts his hand off. And you can't do that in the 4-color comics, but he just falls face down in the stream. He wouldn't be dead, but apparently that does kill him. Maybe Conan hits him again. But he falls down dead in the stream, and when Conan rides back to his men, they say, Conan asks them who gave the command to attack, and one of them says, it was Uzun Beg, but I don't see him now, and Conan says he stopped for a swim. This is full of that. This issue is full of just tossed off comments by Conan and a bunch of other characters that are perfectly full of the droll humor that filled Roy Thomas's early issues of this character. They eventually go up into the mountain. Conan tells these Kyrgyz that he is taking them to treasure, but really he's just keeping them from killing him long enough to find this band of Aquilonians and kill them, because they killed his friend. He finds their horses at the opening to a cave, and he goes into the cave, and we get something genuinely creepy. Genuinely weird. Now, Roy Thomas adapted this story from another story, but it wasn't a Conan story. So I have no idea if this detail, I don't know that I know the original story, I have no idea if this detail is in that story, but it is masterful. He encounters creatures. They are slowly roasting one of these Aquilonians alive. And that's not the creepiest part. They're pretty creepy to look at, but it's what they're saying that is creepy. This one is saying, don't do this to me. And then one of them says, oh gods, they're not human. My arm, oh Ashra, it tore off my arm. They're mindlessly repeating the things that were said by the Aquilonians they assaulted, by the Aquilonians that they attacked and cooked and ate. They're just repeating those. They don't know English. They're just repeating those words, and it's so creepy. Conan, of course, springs out at them, but even in the midst of combat, this one, Conan is leaping at it, and it's saying, it's all quiet, Ali. Too quiet, as Conan is fighting them. Just creepy. I mean, look at this one. When this one closes on Conan, it says, my arm, oh Ashra, it tore off my arm. Just mindlessly doing that. I thought it was really creepy. Conan manages to dispatch them, and he manages to get the man off the spit just long enough for him to talk about the real mission of those Aquilonians, to go into the city and capture a high priestess. And look, I want to show you one more thing. I'm going to keep raving about the artwork because it is incredible. It is Frank Frazetta. It is Prince Valiant. It is amazing. It is just amazing. It's not it, and if you look carefully at this, it's not the figures. It's the rendering, which when Buscema does his own inking, he is in charge of all of that, and it really shows. It really pays off. Look at the cross hatching underneath. Just amazing, just amazingly good. Conan makes his way into the citadel of this hidden religious compound in the middle of the mountain. And of course, naturally, he runs into a comely wench on his way. They bounce into each other, but he's got other things to do. He's got all these guards to fight, and he's only one person, and she clocks him from behind. So they're just going to pound on him. They're going to pound him into the ground when she tells him to stop. Notice how she is lost in shadow on the edge there with a circular spotlight on them. A detail that is in the inking, that is not there in the sketching, and that most inkers that John Buscema had in the run of Savage Sword of Conan would not have thought to make it look so good. That is wonderfully done. To get rid of the background details and most of her and have her in shadow, that is wonderfully done. She tells them to stop beating him and bring him to her room. And when he wakes up, he sees who she is, and it turns out she's someone he knows. A figure from his past called Nefertari, who for a while told him that she had been a slave girl who changed her name to Nefertari. And she tells him, and this is classic John Buscema pin-up material, she tells him that may be her name, but here she's known as the daughter of Rakatavashi, the daughter of the goddess. And then it's continued. So you go from there to this. You go from there to this backup story. It's a bit of a shock, to put it that way. The backup story isn't good. It's not just that it's poorly written. It's that it's not good. And the concluding part in the next issue, the last issue of Savage Sword of Conan, is not only unsatisfying, but weirdly sadistic. It's just horrible, heartbreaking violence for no reason whatsoever. Not to show man's inhumanity to man or as something for Conan to avenge, but it just happens in the story. It's dispiriting to read in a way that I know this is silly, but you don't expect a comic book to do this. I don't, anyway. But in that last issue of Savage Sword of Conan, the daughter of Rakatavashi continues. Conan is once again eating. And when the woman's keeper, her guard, bursts in, look at that panel. Just look at that panel. Incredible. He bursts in, Conan incapacitates him, but she tells Conan that she is here and doesn't want to be. She was once beloved of a king in a distant land, and she wants to go back to him. She felt a call to come back to her home temple, but she now wants to go back to him. She wants to leave this temple, and her acolytes will never let her, so she needs Conan's help. There we have a priest spiriting her away in the middle of the night when she was just a little girl. We see her hair flying in the wind and his hood flying in the wind there with the city in the background. We get a slight connection to other Roy Thomas characters. She was in a caravan that was attacked by Red Sonja and taken away, dances for the king, but then joins the caravan to go to this city. And she's about to be sacrificed when the lead priest here in the Temple of Rakatavashi notices that she has a mark, the mark of Rakatavashi, which he only puts on his actual daughter. She might actually be the daughter of the god. Conan doesn't believe it because she was this slave girl when he met her. It's obviously a ruse of some kind or another, a mistake of some kind or another. But the narrative is funny because in the narrative we're told, and that is when they all saw the mark of Rakatavashi upon my right hip. But John Buscema makes it pretty clear that it is not on her right hip. That's not what we call a hip in anatomy class. And Conan knows the same thing. In this panel up at the top there, he says, so that's what you meant by the mark. Perhaps I should examine it. And she says, maybe later. She doesn't believe any of this claptrap. She just wants to go. She wants them to get going. Conan goes out to see what the lay of the land is in the temple, to see how difficult it will be for them to leave, and he notices, he crawls into a crevice in a wall as two priests walk by, and he reaches out not to stab them, but to choke them to death. And the details of the inking here are amazing. They're almost Gene Colan in this panel here. That is just incredible. That panel is just incredible. Every detail of it. And unlike with other inkers, whether it's Joe Sinnott, who I really like, or Ernie Chan, who I don't, every detail of this is under Buscema's control. And boy, oh boy, does it benefit from that. He figures that they should just go. They should get out of here. But something is going on, because not only are the priests involved, but so are these weird creatures who are now inside the temple. They're not in a cave on the outskirts of the mountain. They're inside the temple, creeping around, repeating the last things they heard. There's one detail in this story that I didn't particularly like. I don't know if it's in the original Robert E. Howard story, where the priest pulls a bell rope and Conan falls through a trap door. And we're told that he falls 20 feet. I think the fall is 20 feet. Let me see if I can get the exact number. Not one man in 100 could have survived such a fall with unshattered bones. Even so, Conan's whole frame is numb, though at least his fatigue has vanished for the moment. No. No, it's not one man in 100. Unless you've got a character with superpowers. Then if you fall 20 feet onto stone, you are going to hurt yourself. You're not going to bruise yourself. You're going to hurt yourself so that you need medical attention. You don't go on with the adventure. But it's Conan, so she is... our precious Nefertari is in her room, and she's wondering, what's taking Conan so long. She hears something moving and says, "Conan, is that you?" And what do we get? Something says, "Conan, is that you?" Because that's all these things can say. It's the last thing they heard. They spirit her away, and we don't know why. Until there's a rather convoluted plot line, but we eventually do get Conan eventually has his comeuppance with the Aquilonians that double-crossed him and killed his mate, including their leader, who he gives a classic Conan end to by crushing his head against a rock. Doesn't bother to gut him or anything like that. He just crushes his head against a rock. But some of the Kyrgyz warriors that he was leading, they had been captured by the temple, and he feels responsible for them, even though he was lying to them, and even though they're perfectly willing to slit his guts, he was their leader. And some of them have now been captured by the temple. So he wants to help them, if they can. So they go back into the temple, but, oh my god, these things are everywhere, all saying Rakatavashi, and they grab her. But they don't grab her to kill her. As we see, here, let me show you that, see? He's saying, "Get away from her, you filth." There, one of them grabs the priest and pulls him down into the ground. Look at the beauty of that artwork. Conan sees this thing advancing on her while she's cowering in terror, and he's ready, but it kneels. So is she, in fact, the daughter of Rakatavashi after all? After all these twists and turns? Is she a dupe? Is she a trickster? Is she a slave girl? Is she a pampered princess or a prince's favorite? Or is she actually what she says? Is that mark real? Well, we don't really know. They're going to take off. Conan does find a buried treasure for his men, but all he can think about is that it's been 3 days since he had any sleep. She actually says to him, "Do you think I really am the daughter of Rakatavashi and just didn't know it?" And Conan says, "Well, those goblins didn't dig their way out of those walls to rescue a Cimmerian and a bunch of hairy hillmen. But if you want to discuss this any further, you'll have to wait till we're leagues from here and I've had some sleep. Gods, but I could swear I could sleep till the rain wore down the mountain of Crom to a mole's hill." And that's the end of the story, is Conan yawning, a mighty yawn. A little bit odd to end the Savage Sword of Conan with a yawn. Maybe not entirely unintentional, but I loved it. My God. Never in a million years did I think that the final story that I read, that if I went all the way to the end of Savage Sword of Conan during the Savage Sword of September, I would find a gem. This is wonderful. What I wouldn't give if somehow it were possible to repurpose this in black and white in one issue with just this story, not the backups, just this story. I guess it's forever destined to be just part 1 and part 2 in separate issues of this. I don't know how that would ever not be true. I think it's a shame. In my ideal, in the ideal situation, I always dream up ideal publication situations. And in an ideal publication, I didn't show you the cover of this one, did I? Let me go back to that while I'm talking. In the ideal publication situation that I would want, somebody would come out with a gigantic hardcover volume of uncollected Buscema Conan. So stuff like this, that was, one half of an issue. Let's say you don't want the other guy. Let's say you don't want any of the other artwork. I'm sure this is not the only time this happened in the run of Savage Sword, and who knows where else. Where there are these bits and pieces. There are these 8-page parts to stories. What I wouldn't give for Marvel to comb through their archives, repurpose all of this stuff, and put it out in one volume as the uncollected Buscema. I would buy that book. As big as it is, I would buy it. Just to show you, this is the cover of the final issue. And once again, just to go out the way we came in, Conan is for some reason fighting with his back to the audience, with his back to the threat. Now I say some reason. I know the reason why artists insist on putting characters in this dumb position, because otherwise it's hard to show the monster and the fighter without just showing the fighter's back and buttocks. You kind of have to do something like this, or you won't be able to see both. But still, there are better ways to do it than this. And this thing, what is this? This is number 235. This went all the way to 235. I think it cost like $2.50, something like that. Which ordinarily made me frown on it in those later days of Savage Sword, but not this issue, not these two, not with those gems of artwork. Oh my. So now my complacency is shattered, which is good. That's good for me. It's good for my complacency. Now I don't know. I'm going to spin the wheel at random for the next issue of Savage Sword. No idea what I'll find. I'm going to stay in the 200s, I think, for the next one. And I'll report back. I'll tell you what I find. So I will wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.